Welcome to What's Your Next Move, the podcast for peak performers who are making things happen but are running into roadblocks that prevent them from getting what they want. Whether you work for someone else, you're an entrepreneur, thinking about starting your own business, or at a point in your life where you just can't make the move from where you are to where you want to go, you're in the right place. This podcast is all about answering one question: what's your next move? And helping you harness your power so your next move is the one that changes your life. I'm your host and resident provocateur, Arlene Battisil, and I want to know, what's your next move? Hi there, it's Arlene Battisil, your host and resident provocateur, and I have something today for you that is very unusual for me to be doing on my podcast because it involves a personal story of someone who is very quickly trending on the internet right now because of something that happened to him. And so let me tell you first about my own story. And the reason this is all coming up right now is because yesterday a podcast was published where I had been interviewed on the pitchqueen.com. And one of the questions the interviewer asked me was, what was one of the biggest no's that someone had ever given you throughout your life? And I haven't had very many, because if somebody tells me no, I basically tell them to fuck off, or, I figure out how to turn that no into a yes. But I was being really aggressively recruited for a job with a software company. And I went in for the interview and hit it off with the guy that I was going to be working with. It was an executive level position. I was uniquely qualified for the position, and it was a lot of money. There was just no question. It was a home run for me. I was perfect for them. They were perfect for me. I met with all of the staff that I'd be managing, the whole 9 yards, and it was the best thing ever. And at the end of the interview, the guy that interviewed me offered me the job. And this was on a Monday, and come Wednesday, he was going to send me the official offer letter. And so everything was all set to go. I told him right then and there I would be accepting the offer on Wednesday, and that when did he want me to start? He told me, and there you go. And on my way out of the office, I happened to notice that there was a big Bible verse up on the wall above the reception area that somehow it didn't even register when I walked in. I must have been looking down at my phone or something. And as I was leaving the office and I saw this big Bible verse, I thought, this might actually be a problem. And I went home and I immediately called the guy and I said to him, look, I need to let you know something, because if there's some kind of big religious influence in this company, I don't know that this is going to work. And he said, why? And I said, because I'm gay. And he said, well, I can't even imagine how that would even matter, because I'm Jewish. So he was thinking, well, they're not going to discriminate against you because you're gay, because if they're going to discriminate against you, they're going to discriminate against me because I'm Jewish and I'm not Christian. And so I said, oh, okay, well, that sounds great. But I said, go ahead and check with, the guy that I had interviewed with. He was the president of the company or CEO, and just ask him. And he said, yeah, absolutely. I'll go do it right now. So I don't hear anything. And the next day, I don't hear anything. And on Wednesday, I got a phone call from the recruiter saying that they were extending the offer to someone else. And both the recruiter and the guy that I interviewed with made it clear to me that they had no one that had the qualifications for the job, and that I was the first person who came in with all of the qualifications. And I said to the recruiter, okay, the guy extended the job offer to me. And yes, I understand nothing's final until you get the offer in writing, but come on, let's be real here. We're professionals. This is how this works. He extended the offer. I accepted, and it was just a matter of laying the paper trail come Wednesday. And the job offer evaporated right before my eyes simply because I'm gay. And that brings me to my guest today. I have a very special guest. His name is Gary Campbell, and he is actually trending on the internet right now. Several media outlets, including Slate.com, George Takei, who is just constantly posting on Facebook and elsewhere. He has retweeted or reshared Gary's story. And because of what happened to me, I felt that, I had no recourse in that situation. And so today I'm bringing a story to you of Gary Campbell and the situation that he is in right now, because it is important to give the microphone to people who otherwise do not have a voice. And that's a lot of people out in the world today. And I just felt that I've been in this situation before, and it's time for me to hand the microphone over to somebody else. So, Gary, thank you very, very much for being with me today.
Thank you. It's my pleasure.
Now, by way of background for everyone, I'm just going to give the abbreviated version of this, and then we're going to get into the details. The story that's out on the internet right now involves a hashtag that is hashtag Let Gary Graduate. And you'll find it all over Twitter right now, and it's being picked up across a number of other media outlets. A number of media outlets have already run stories, and the story is picking up steam. Now, Gary was in a situation where he was 2 classes short of graduating from a university. And after a long absence from attendance at that university, he applied for readmission so that he could complete the 2 remaining courses online. And Gary was refused readmission because he's gay, even though the university knew that he was gay at the time he was attending the university. So to be clear here, the university allowed him to attend the university, accepted all of his money for tuition, and when he is 2 classes short of graduating, denies him the ability to complete his education. Now, Gary, let's pick it up with your story here.
So basically, I'm in recovery right now. I've been sober from alcohol for almost 20 months. One of my goals, dreams, / promises to myself being in recovery was to finish my degree. So lo and behold, the beginning of the year, 2018, so I sent an email to the school admissions counselor, and I said, hey, like, what do I need to do to graduate? And she ran the numbers, did all the paperwork, and she said, listen, you only need 2 more classes to graduate. And I was like, holy moly, like, this is great. So she had me fill out a readmission application. Everything looked good. Then fast forward to May, the dean of students called me, which we actually knew each other on a personal basis, and he congratulated me on reapplying, asked me what I've been up to since 2003, and I told him about the Navy and just about, where I'm living now, what I'm doing with my life. And he was very happy that I was reapplying. Never once did he ask about my private life, which at that point I didn't think was any of his business. At this point, I view myself as a student, and I'm just applying for an online class. Fast forward to August, and he calls me again and said, Gary, it appears to us that you are still living a homosexual lifestyle, and unfortunately, we can't let you complete fall classes. Listen, I understand that, but I just want to finish my degree. I don't have any agenda. I don't have any, I don't want to influence anybody. I just want to finish my degree. This is just all I want. You can write a letter of appeal to the administration and we'll go from there. And then I took a whole night to write a 2-page letter, a very heartfelt letter, explaining to them my situation. And I pretty much laid out to them, I said, please do not look at me as a homosexual or somebody that's in violation of your code of conduct, but please look at me as somebody that has been through a lot, wants to impact his community, and be a force for good. And with that, they quickly replied with one sentence, you are still in violation of the code of conduct. And that hurt. It hurt for 2 reasons. One, because I view this school as friends. I know that we don't agree on everything philosophically, but I view them as friends. Secondly, I was hurt too because I thought, I was finally getting my life on track. I'm 19 months sober, and this was a sign that my life was getting back on track. And then it just felt like the rug was taken underneath from me again. And so I took a couple days to just meditate, connect with my sponsor and some real close friends, and I decided to write a letter to this parent. The letter wasn't vindictive. It was just me explaining what happened. I didn't think they would respond. I really didn't. I just was, throwing it out there. And next thing I know, I get a call from a reporter, and she runs the story. And it was a beautiful article. And next, within hours, the story exploded. And I don't even have a Twitter account, so I made one just to see what was going on, and I just couldn't believe it. And and then Twitter is one thing, but then I noticed that on Reddit it's blown up. And Reddit is a beast in itself. And then the next day happened. I'm getting more calls from reporters, more interviews, and I'm just like, wow. And I don't I don't even know how to make 2 cents of this. And
Right.
I didn't ask for this at all. And then the first TV interview came up with the WBRE in Scranton, and that was cool too. But what hit me the most was when the reporter asked, he goes, how do you feel about becoming the new face of LGBT rights? I was like, what? And I never asked for that. I never expected that. So it's definitely been a wild ride since Monday.
Yeah, and this has all happened. It's just Thursday now, so this is just your 4th day into this, and it starts from you just writing a letter, and the whole thing just takes off. And that's the beauty of the internet, where I know in most of these cases, sometimes these cases have to be tried in the court of public opinion, and that takes place on social media. And it is truly the great leveler, because the people who have power have always been able to operate in secrecy, really, because the public has never known that these things are going on. And I know that I saw when I was looking at your story, I saw the hashtag all over the place, and I saw the people that were retweeting and so forth, and then I started to see it trending on the internet, and so clearly the court of public opinion is in session.
Yeah.
People are weighing in. Now, one thing I want to make sure that the audience understands is that this is actually a religious institution, this university, and it was, for all intents and purposes, when you started at the school a decade ago, it was a Bible college or a Bible university, but it was a religious-based institution. And so that is why this is an issue, because they have a university policy, not law, policy, for which any organization is entitled to do so, but religious institutions are protected by law and allowed to discriminate against people. It's just a fact. I don't care what anybody else calls it, that when you prevent someone from doing something that you allow everyone else to do, and you make it specific to something about who that person is, it's not even a question of changing something. It is, you're picking out a personal characteristic of a person, and you're using that as the basis of denying them what everyone else has equal access to. If you have the ability to do what everyone else does, then how is it that you can be prevented from doing that? You can't just arbitrarily pick and choose who you want. You have a number of slots. If you have a number of people, you have criterion that you use in order to decide who is going to be accepted. But in this situation, you were accepted, and then they reversed that acceptance and were very overt about telling you that it was because you were gay. And to suggest that you are living a homosexual lifestyle is outrageous, because people don't live lifestyles. They have a lifestyle that is supported by various things. So I want to make sure to be on record about that fact, because for anyone to be using that language in this day and age, it's so 1950.
Yeah.
Not that I have any feelings about this, but this is so fucking ludicrous. And here you are, 2 classes short, and you're going to take them online. It's not like you're going to be waving the gay flag around campus. You might be waving it at your desk, but okay. Fine,
right, yeah.
Right?
Yeah, whatever.
Now, my God. Okay, so at this point, you're now in a situation where, okay, the story is picking up steam, and obviously you have no legal rights. You have no legal recourse in this, and we are going to, look at what happens in the days and weeks and months to come with all of this. But I know from talking to you prior to the start of the show, you had mentioned that another university, the president of another university, reached out to you.
Yeah.
And what was that conversation?
And that's actually the happy ending. Well, if it isn't ending yet, but after almost an hour after the story was published, the same reporter contacted me. She said, Gary, she goes, I have good news. And she goes, the president of Lackawanna College heard your story. He is also a veteran, just like you are, and he wants to help you. She goes, he wants to just pull all his resources and just, help you out. And I was like, no way. And so I contacted him via email, and he wrote a heartfelt letter back saying, Gary, I want to help you. I heard your story, and it moved me. It grabbed me. And I want to do all we can to help you. He goes, we're going to make sure that we can transfer in all your credits. And if we can offer any financial aid to you, then we'll do it. And so he put me in contact with his best admissions counselor. And I've been talking with her since.
Oh my God.
And where we're at, and where we're at, yeah. And where we're at now, the best option she has for me is they can take all but 15 credits, which is great.
Oh my God. That's like what, 5 classes?
Yeah, because most schools require a residency requirement.
Right.
Where you have to go back at least and take it 40 credits at least to establish residency. Mm-hmm. And they're giving me a huge exception, and going to say, we're going to take 15 credits. And then the president, he's been contacting me again. He's going, we're going to make this economically doable for you as much as we can. And he goes, and the part that touched my heart the most, he goes, Gary, I cannot wait to personally hand you your diploma.
Oh my God. That just gave me chills, Gary.
I know, like I'm getting like choked up just thinking about it. And Arlene, like the thing that touched me the most is that here was a school that I considered friends, and they pretty much slapped me in the face. Yeah. And then here comes along, a school that just wants to help me and just be there for me and support me and celebrate me and love the whole person. And it's fantastic.
Oh my God, Gary, what a phenomenal outcome. And for this outcome to have happened and this groundswell of support that's happening on the internet and the way in which this is continuing to call into question the discriminatory practices of educational institutions and other organizations, it is the only way that people can actually fight back. And it's amazing that when the word is out, what people will do in response to their sense of injustice. And so, my gosh, Gary, this is just the best news. I did not know that this was the latest update. And obviously more will come as this story continues to go viral on the internet. Now, one of the things I want to do in our conversation today is really give you an opportunity to talk about just the whole reality of the situation, because I'm going to have you, share with our listeners your story from beginning to end that has, quite a bit to do with the fact that you were in this university in the first place and then ended up in the military. And what happened to you after that? Because I know from what you have shared with me offline that the trajectory of your life has been very, very challenging. And knowing what I know of the story that you shared with me, to know that this is where you have come to as a result, I mean, it's just the most heartwarming thing, because many times people do not have this kind of an outcome. And so I want you to take me back in time, because all of this has to do with you being gay. And so if you want to talk to me first, let's do this. Let me just ask you a few questions about this.
Sure.
When did you first realize that you were gay?
I was a teenager, and I just knew I was attracted to men. I sometimes, the funny story is I blame Mark Wahlberg, because he would post for Calvin Klein. He'd post for Calvin Klein at that time, and I'm like, that's it. And so if he's listening, I say, thank you. It's your fault that I'm gay. Yeah. But
and they worry about gay people turning other people gay. Mark Wahlberg turned young men gay.
Exactly. So, and at that point, that's when I knew. Fast forward a couple of years later, at that time I also became a Christian. The church I attended preached that homosexuality is a sin. So at that time, I ran with it. And long story short, I told my youth pastor that I was gay, and we agreed to do some counseling and to just basically see if we can correct this issue.
So in effect, it was kind of pray the gay away.
Essentially.
Yeah.
and that's painful. That's painful for a teenager to go through, especially when you have feelings for somebody and you're told that those feelings are sinful. It really fucks with you. And so I graduated from high school, and then I attended Baptist Bible College because I wanted to do ministry. I wanted to work in the church. Before I attended the school knew very well that I had this quote unquote struggle with homosexuality, and it was agreed upon that I would still continue counseling and have accountability while I was there. Essentially, my life would be under watch while I was at this school, in order to continue to
the university that has now denied you.
Yes.
Okay. So wait, they knew right from the moment that you were admitted that you were gay?
Yeah.
Oh, geez.
But in their worldview, I had a spirit of repentance. So that was probably why they let me come in, I guess. But I'm only speculating. So I ended up doing very well in school. I was on the dean's list, and I was very, I had a lot of leadership positions on the campus. But as human nature allows us to, I met somebody that was also gay on campus, and we had feelings for each other. We ended up being intimate with each other, and the school found out, and they wanted to expel me, but instead they sent me home all the way back to Michigan to tell my church, to tell my family what happened. And then they stripped me of 3 of my leadership positions, and and at that point I started to question, like, is this really the path I want? Because this is painful. And I ended up leaving the school. That's when my leave of absence took place. And I moved back home to Michigan, started to attend community college, but realized quickly that a lot of my credits from the university didn't transfer elsewhere because they were a religious university. Mm-hmm. So it was in that point that I joined the Navy, found out that I was an alcoholic, was battling a lot of depression, and now here we are pretty much today, where we're at now.
And when you talk about the alcoholism and depression, how early did that start for you?
I want to say that the drinking started picking up in 2008, so that's 5 years after I left the school. That's when it started getting pretty heavy.
And how long were you in the military?
3.5 years.
Right. And so, and I'm assuming that you were drinking quite heavily when you were in the military.
Mm-hmm, yes.
And so, as we have this picture to that point, can you talk to me a little bit about just what was going on for you emotionally throughout this time, where here you are as a young person who's coming to the realization that he's gay and are in, the church, and you're being told basically there's something wrong with you and they need to correct this. And then you go to a university that wants to further reinforce that. And then you go into the military. That's a highly structured environment that was not open to gay people at the time. So how are you managing the environment that you're in the entire time from an emotional standpoint? And you end up drinking as a result, and it's kind of a form of self-medication.
Exactly.
But the depression, what kind of things were you saying to yourself and you were thinking at that time and through that time?
Well, yeah, I mean, you nailed it on the head. It was my outlet, my go-to was alcohol. I mean, pretty much with at least 15 years of negative feedback from people that I trusted, that took a huge toll on my self-esteem. Mm-hmm. So what else does, somebody in their, late 20s do to correct that is through alcohol. Right. So now that I'm sober and I can think clearly, what am I doing to handle that? One of the things I do on a daily basis is I avoid negative self-talk. I avoid unnecessary guilt. I call those voices out and I say, listen, like I just put boundaries around my mind, saying I'm just not allowed to think that way, because right now I want to love myself. And by loving myself, I congratulate myself. I speak highly of myself, and I don't let anybody make me feel inferior.
Right.
So,
And going back to early on, when you were talking about, you know, the kind of messages that you were getting from people who were supposed to love you, does that also include your family?
So I have a dad and stepmom and a mom and stepdad. My dad and stepmom are they're very religious. I applaud their faith. They're very dedicated. There was a lot of heartache when I decided to go through with my sexuality, and there was an adjustment period. And now today we have a very good relationship. We understand each other. They have met my boyfriend, and they embrace him. But there was that divide that lasted for a while. There was that where I did feel like a black sheep, where I did feel like, I'm no longer in the fold, so to speak.
Right.
And that, again, that takes a lot on a young person.
Right. So that takes us from the time when you were a younger person, and then when you came into the university and your goal was to be in the ministry, how were you managing emotionally around the fact that you were gay in a religious environment?
There was that disconnect because, I don't get me wrong, I did enjoy the time being in school, but I was hiding a lot. Like, people would ask, Gary, why are you single? Why don't you ever, flirt with girls? And I had to lie. I had to lie or either, move around the question. And that makes you feel disconnected from your community.
Did that make you feel disconnected from yourself?
Absolutely. I think I didn't know myself because of that.
Right.
I think for me, the most painful thing is if I would develop a crush on somebody, for example, at the school, and me in my own mind saying, you shouldn't feel this way. You shouldn't feel this way. This is wrong. This is sinful. And that was so painful. It's not only unrequited love, but it's unrequited love from yourself.
Yeah.
And that sucks. Like, I would never wish that situation on my worst enemy, honestly.
Right. And this is happening so early on in your life. And then you make the decision to enter the military. That is another very homophobic institution. And you're moving from one to the next. And once you get into the military, what were you thinking? What was your thinking behind going into the military in the first place? Was it that this was a way that you would be able to find a way to pay for your continuing education, or that you would be able to receive an education there that would create opportunities for you job-wise? Why did you end up in the military?
I think I was tired of failing at life, because I knew that the university experience was a huge failure in my mind at the time. And me just trying to make ends meet to survive living on my own, I just wanted to do something that would make me proud of myself again. And that was the motivation behind that.
Right. And how was the experience in the military for the 3-some years that you were there? It
was actually very decent. I got to see the world. I got to, I excelled in the military. I ranked up almost 3 pay grades within a year and a half, which is exceptional. And I was very good at my job. But I thought too, Arlene, that the Navy would fix my self-esteem issues. I thought the Navy would fix my depression. But it didn't, because that's not how you solve problems.
Right.
And so instead the alcohol just continued. And then, lo and behold, I got kicked out of the military because of my alcoholism.
Right. I just want to ask you something about the depression before we move on in the chronology of events. When you think about that time and the desperation that you were feeling and the depression, what do you recall was sort of at the root of the depression? What were you thinking at that time, or what were you feeling that was leaving you feeling so depressed?
I was just very disappointed with my life. I also, too, a lot of my friends at the time had their careers. They had their degrees. I did not, so it was a lot of comparing myself to other people.
Right.
And I think a lot of it, too, was just, overthinking, or, just not realizing that, regardless, my family does love me. And I was almost afraid to believe that they love me.
Right.
And I think that had a lot to do with it, and I was hiding behind my own disappointment. and my shame. That was my garb, so to speak. And
Right.
so I think that was what had a lot to do with it.
Mm-hmm. And when you're moving through life draped in disappointment and shame, it's hard to be positive and optimistic about the future, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
And it strikes me from what you've shared that you had been an exceptional student, you'd been an exceptional soldier, and nothing comes to fruition. And so in a way, it's like no matter how good you are, you just can't make shit happen for yourself, but you're doing everything you can to make things happen for yourself. And the ability to do so is being thwarted because you're in environments that simply refuse to accept you for who you are.
Exactly. And I think too, that's like when the dean called me and said I could no longer be a student, it brought back that feeling of, God, I just cannot make things happen.
Yeah.
And there was that pity party I had for a couple of days.
Mm-hmm.
But you know what? I didn't relapse. I didn't drink again. What I did was just surround myself with positive feedback, and people just reminded me, Gary, get back in the game. You've accomplished way too much to go back to the bottle.
And that statement right there, Gary, as an entrepreneur who has gone, to hell and back on her own journey of building a business, that just speaks volumes that when you are just so down because you feel like there's just nothing more that you can do and you can't make anything happen, and yet you press on again because that's what you must do. It speaks so much to who you are as a person, who I'm guessing is who you've always been as a person. And these circumstances are such that in a way you've been robbed of your ability to be the full person you are and who you are in your fullness.
Right. Absolutely.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And I think that's the beauty of this whole situation, is that I look at the last 15 years as, oh my God, a series of failures. But when I look at it as a whole, I realize, wow, I'm resilient as fuck. Like I am strong, and there's nothing that I can't accomplish at this point. And if I can realize that today, I feel like I'm a successful person then.
Oh my God, truer words have never been spoken. And I just had a big belly laugh with you saying that, because I'm thinking I'm going to title this podcast Resilient as Fuck.
Please do. I love that.
It suits me so much, since the F word is my favorite word.
Okay. That's why we're good friends. I like that.
Yeah, exactly. Right. Oh my gosh. It's just really extraordinary. Just all of what you have shared so far. And the one thing I just keyed into was, I read the letter that you wrote to the dean, and I had tears in my eyes by the time I finished that letter, because, nobody recounts a journey like yours in the way that you did. It was so moving and compelling. And I mean, you're somebody who's in recovery and you're only 20 months out. And to have this devastating news, I mean, I don't even think that dean connected into everything that you had written in that letter, that him denying you could completely throw you out of your recovery. So you're in the situation in the first place where you're being denied for who you are by the university in the beginning, and then it happens once again. You have this whole span of life, probably 10 years or so, where your life turns into a complete shit show, compliments of what happened and how you were made to feel about yourself. And then you find yourself in a moment where, but the same perpetrator is perpetrating the same crime against you, which for many people would send them right back into their addiction. And yet you managed to say, oh, hell no, that is not what my life is going to be. And that is the really extraordinary thing for me in everything that you've said thus far, because that's the difference between you and probably 99% of the people who don't survive something like this. They cannot recover fully. They cannot move forward. They cannot get out in front of those things that are so devastating. And it leads me to ask you, given everything that you've experienced and just feeling like, it doesn't matter what you do, you're never going to be able to have the life that you want.
Mm-hmm.
How is it that you're the exception to the rule, where you manage to stay in your recovery and not be completely gutted by this thing in a way that's going to be very, very detrimental and harmful to you? What is it about you? Why are you so different?
I like to take the credit that I did this on myself, but the biggest lesson I learned in recovery is I cannot do this on my own. I need my community. And that's what I did. I reached out to my community, my sponsor, close friends, my significant other, Angel, and they surrounded me with positive feedback. They say in recovery programs that a lonely addict is bad company. And, and I was definitely not alone. I was surrounded, by love, and it was people pushing me, do not let this school defeat you. My mantra right now is, the school can withhold my degree, but they can never take away my sobriety.
Yeah.
And to me, my sobriety that's my gift to myself today.
Right.
Is my sobriety. And on top of that, the school can never take away who I am. And, for 15 years, they've been dictating in my mind who I am. And that's a disgusting person. And the beauty of this whole trending thing, the Twitter and the Reddit and all that, it has really helped me to just throw those chains off. I didn't realize this school had such a hold on my self-esteem. And I'm now able to just say, you know what, you have lost an exceptional student. It is your loss that you denied me enrollment.
Right. Absolutely. And what strikes me, it's really provocative to think about what you said about the school can't steal your sobriety, because they had the potential to do it, especially given what you described about them having this hold over you for the past 15 years. And this is not unlike what happens to anyone who's suffered trauma, where the perpetrator has this hold on them that goes on for years after the assault. And that's exactly, as I see it and my understanding of trauma, that's exactly what's happened here. And for you to have survived it, come out the other side and be thriving now is, it's the most extraordinary thing that this is the outcome. And this is not unlike what happens to entrepreneurs who just, you're gutting it out every single day and you just feel like nothing's ever going to change, and the despair and everything that you feel and all of the responsibilities, and that you're failing and you're not living up to your potential, and the self-doubt and the lack of confidence that seeps into every entrepreneur along their journey. It's very much the same thing. And here you are in a moment where your voice is finally being heard. You're being honored for who you truly are. You can celebrate who you are. You can, as you say, take those chains of bondage off and live a real, full, authentic life. And oh my gosh, Gary, this has just been such a magnificent story, and I thank you so much for sharing it with me. Gary, I want to ask you one last thing before we wrap up. Well, the name of my podcast, as you know, is What's Your Next Move? And so that's the last thing I have to ask you, because it is absolutely apropos in this moment. So what is your next move?
My next move is to finish my degree. If that's through Lackawanna College, then I will gladly accept that, especially since they're now my new family. That's if they're going to be this kind to me, they're my new school family. And and what's cool with this option too is I can actually walk down the stage for commencements. Like, I don't have to stay home. I can actually go to commencements and not hide my sexuality, not hide who I am, and just and that's it. Not just grab my certificate, but for me, this is a celebration of everything I've been through, and it's a culmination of so much hard work and tears and pain, and it'll be probably a really great moment in my life. Aside from that too, if I get my degree, I want to start doing substance abuse counseling, whether that's being a peer recovery coach or working, with addicts in any venue or form. I'll gladly take that on. Right now, I'm living with my partner, Angel. We've been together for almost 2 years, and I just want to continue my relationship with him. He's been freaking amazing to me. Not many guys would date an addict, an alcoholic.
Mm-hmm.
And he's been my number one supporter through this whole thing.
Wow, that's really extraordinary. And it sounds like you have a really beautiful relationship. And I wish you all the best in your relationship and in what happens with Lackawanna College. And I have no doubt that you are going to find your way to that graduation stage. And I'm going to tell you this, Gary, I hope that you will extend an invitation to me, because I want to be there to see you walking across that stage, because I'm
absolutely
like crazy for you. And I think a whole lot of other people will be too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it'll be a nice happy ending. I think it'll be
beautiful, wonderful. Well, Gary, again, thank you very much for taking the time to talk with me. I know you've got media outlets all over the place. I'm lucky I got a little bit of time with you.
Oh my gosh,
thank you so much.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you very much.
Beautiful. Well, that wraps up a very unusual episode for me today. And I'm just going to leave you to think about everything that we talked about today, whatever it is that you feel about all of this. But it's my show, my platform, my voice, my my guest. So you may or may not like it, but you know how I am. I don't really give a fuck. So everybody, I'm Arlene Battisil, once again, the host of What's Your Next Move, and of course, your resident provocateur. And I hope that you enjoyed the episode today. And as I always end every episode, I asked you to think about your life and ask yourself, what's your next move? Thanks so much for listening. I'll be back with another episode. Welcome to What's Your Next Move, the podcast for peak performers who are making things happen, but are running into roadblocks that prevent them from getting what they want. Whether you work for someone else, you're an entrepreneur, thinking about starting your own business, or at a point in your life where you just can't make the move from where you are to where you want to go, you're in the right place. This podcast is all about answering one question: what's your next move? And helping you harness your power so your next move is the one that changes your life. I'm your host and resident provocateur, Arlene Battisil, and I want to know, what's your next move?